When I first moved into Willow Creek Estates with my daughter Emma, I thought I was finally giving her the peaceful life she deserved. After years of bouncing between rental homes and noisy neighborhoods, this quiet suburban street, with its manicured lawns, white fences, and perfectly symmetrical flower beds, felt like heaven. Emma was born with a neurological disorder that made walking difficult, and after the accident that took her father, I promised myself she would never again have to feel unsafe. She was my whole world, bright, curious, and endlessly kind. She'd sit in her wheelchair by the window, watching birds hop along the fence, sketching them in her worn little notebook. When the moving truck left and the silence settled in, I actually let myself smile for the first time in months. That was the day I met Karen. She walked up our driveway, wearing an HOA badge like a crown, clipboard in hand, her lips pressed into a smile that never reached her eyes. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said sweetly, though the way her gaze swept over our boxes and Emma's chair felt more like an inspection than a greeting. "We just like to keep things uniform around here." I thanked her and introduced Emma, who smiled and waved. Karen's eyes flicked down to her brace, then back up to me, her tone softening into pity. "She must be such a handful," she murmured. I forced a laugh, trying not to take offense, but something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. That night, while Emma colored at the kitchen table, I caught Karen pacing outside near our mailbox, glancing toward our window before pretending to check her phone. The next morning, I found a note tucked under our door, neat handwriting signed HOA notice. It said, "Please ensure your child does not leave personal items on the community lawns. We value order in Willow Creek." I frowned. Emma's chalk drawings on our driveway weren't community property. I decided to ignore it, chalking it up, no pun intended, to an overzealous neighbor. But the messages kept coming. Little slips of paper, polite yet sharp. "Wheelchair ramps must match the community's color code. Please refrain from displaying unsightly medical equipment in public view." Each one felt colder than the last, as though the words themselves were watching us. Still, I tried to stay optimistic. Emma had started to make friends, a little boy named Jake from across the street, and she was laughing more again. One Saturday morning, she asked if she could roll her chair down the sidewalk to see Jake's new puppy. I told her yes, but stay close. I was unpacking dishes when I heard a sudden shout outside, harsh, piercing, filled with rage. I ran to the window and froze. Karen was standing on her porch, arms crossed, yelling at Emma. "Stay off my lawn," she screamed. Emma, terrified, tried to turn her chair around, her hands trembling on the wheels. I rushed out, heart pounding. "Karen, she didn't mean," but Karen cut me off. "Your daughter ran over my tulips. Do you have any idea how expensive they are?" I looked down. A few petals were crushed near the curb, barely noticeable. "She didn't mean to," I said softly. "Please, she's disabled." "Yes, I can see that," Karen snapped, her voice dripping venom. "But that doesn't mean she gets special treatment here." My jaw tightened. Neighbors were peeking from behind curtains. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I wheeled her back toward our house, trying not to cry myself. From behind us, Karen muttered, "Maybe you should teach her boundaries before something worse happens." That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of Karen's face, tight, hateful, almost trembling with some inner fury, haunted me. Why would a grown woman hate a child so much? I started keeping the curtains closed. Emma grew quieter, too, asking if we could move again. I promised her things would get better, but even as I said it, I didn't believe it. Days turned into weeks. Every time we stepped outside, Karen found something to criticize. She took photos of our yard, claimed our trash cans were too close to the sidewalk, and once left a citation for unauthorized lighting because I'd hung a soft night lamp on the porch for Emma's safety. It felt like living under surveillance. Then came the sound. Late one evening around 10 p.m., I heard metallic clicks from outside, the unmistakable snap of a latch. I peeked through the blinds. Karen was standing on her porch again, but this time, she wasn't holding her clipboard. She was holding a small black case. She opened it briefly, the porch light glinting off something silver inside, something that looked disturbingly like a gun. I froze, every instinct screaming danger. But before I could react, she shut it quickly and turned toward her house, her silhouette swallowed by the dark. I stood there long after she disappeared, the image seared into my mind. The next morning, I tried convincing myself I was imagining things. Maybe it was a toolkit or a camera lens, but when I saw her again later that day, standing by the mailboxes, her hand casually resting on her hip as if on an invisible holster, my doubt vanished. She caught me looking, and that fake smile returned. "Morning," she said softly. "Lovely day, isn't it? You and your daughter staying out of trouble?" I didn't answer. I just took Emma's hand and went back inside. That night, as I tucked her in, she asked in a trembling voice, "Mom, why does that lady hate me?" My throat closed up. I brushed her hair away from her face and whispered, "Some people hate what they don't understand, baby, but I'll never let her hurt you." I turned off the light, sat by her bed until she fell asleep, and stared out the window at Karen's porch light, glowing in the distance, steady, unblinking, like an eye that never shut. Deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Something dark was festering beneath that perfect neighborhood surface, and I could feel it closing in on us, inch by inch. For a while after that night, I tried to pretend things were normal. I told myself Karen's cruelty was just noise, that if we kept our heads down, she'd lose interest. But that was wishful thinking. She didn't fade away, she multiplied. Her influence spread like a stain across the neighborhood. It started subtly. A few neighbors who used to wave at us suddenly looked the other way, pretending not to hear Emma's cheerful greetings. Then came the HOA reminders, letters citing violations I'd never heard of, improper mailbox color, unsanctioned ramp dimensions, even unauthorized bird feeding. Each one came with a fine. I could feel Karen's fingerprints on every envelope. The breaking point came one sunny afternoon when I was in the front yard planting flowers with Emma. We were laughing, for once really laughing, when Karen appeared at the end of the driveway, clipboard in hand and a smirk twisting her lips. "Those aren't the approved flower species for front yards," she said, snapping a photo. "You'll need to remove them or face a citation." I looked at the blooms in my hands, small, harmless marigolds, and something inside me cracked. "They're just flowers, Karen," I said, my voice trembling. "My daughter picked them out. Can't you let one thing go?" Her smile widened, sharp as glass. "Rules are rules," she said, simply turning on her heel. Emma's face fell. She whispered, "Did I do something bad, Mom?" I knelt beside her, hugging her tightly. "No, sweetheart, you did nothing wrong." But as I held her, I saw Karen looking back from her porch, her expression almost gleeful. The harassment grew bolder after that. One morning, I found our trash cans overturned, garbage strewn across the lawn. Karen stood across the street with two other HOA members, arms folded, pretending to inspect something on the sidewalk. Another time, someone spray painted "Follow the Rules" on our driveway in bright red. I filed a police report, but the officer only shrugged. "No proof it was her," he said. "You could install cameras." Cameras in a neighborhood that was supposed to be safe. That night I did, but even then I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched in more ways than one. Every time Emma went outside, Karen appeared as if summoned. She'd hover by her mailbox, phone in hand, recording, muttering about property damage or safety hazards. Once, when Emma accidentally dropped her ball near Karen's hedge, Karen shouted from her porch, "Touch that again, and I'll make sure you're gone." I rushed out, furious. "She's a child." I shouted back, "She doesn't understand your stupid lines." Karen's smile faded for the first time. Her face hardened, and her voice dropped to a hiss. "Maybe you should start teaching her to understand consequences." The way she said it, low, deliberate, almost like a promise, sent a chill down my spine. That evening, I went to an HOA meeting to finally confront her in front of everyone. I rehearsed my words, printed the letters, even brought photos of the vandalism. When I walked in, though, the room went quiet. Karen sat at the head of the table, of course, her posture perfect, her expression innocent. "Martha," she greeted me. "So glad you came. We were actually just discussing your recent issues." "My issues?" I repeated. "You mean your harassment?" She blinked. "Harassment? Oh no, dear. We've received multiple complaints about you. My stomach dropped. What? Noise, disturbances, property violations, refusing HOA communication, she said smoothly, sliding a file toward me. Inside were printouts of supposed evidence, blurry photos, fake emails, even a claim that Emma had been rolling onto neighbors' property unsupervised. My hands shook as I looked around the room. The other members avoided my gaze. I realized then how deep her manipulation ran. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor, she was a queen bee, and this was her hive. You're lying, I said quietly. Karen tilted her head. Prove it. When I got home, Emma was waiting by the window, her eyes wide. Did they fix it? She asked hopefully. I knelt beside her, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Not yet, baby, but they will. I didn't sleep that night. My mind spun with anger, fear, and something darker. The thought that maybe, somehow, I'd underestimated Karen's capacity for cruelty. The next morning, my suspicion turned to certainty. I found another envelope taped to our front door. It wasn't an HOA notice this time, just a single sentence written in messy, rushed handwriting. If your daughter steps on my property again, I'll make sure it's the last thing she does. My heart slammed against my ribs. I called the police again, but they treated it like a neighborhood dispute. No direct threat, they said. Just keep your distance. Keep your distance. How do you keep distance from a monster who lives 20 feet away? Days later, the HOA held their annual community barbecue, a fake, smiling event where everyone pretended to be friendly. I didn't want to go, but Emma begged me. She wanted to see Jake again. So I gave in. For a while, it was almost normal, laughter, kids playing, the smell of grilled food. Then Karen showed up. Her entrance was theatrical, sunglasses, perfect hair, red wine in hand. People greeted her like royalty. She approached us slowly, her smile too wide. Enjoying yourself? She asked, eyes flicking between me and Emma. Yes, I said tightly. We're just here to have fun. She leaned closer, her perfume sickly sweet. Maybe you should be more careful where your daughter rolls her chair. Wouldn't want any more accidents. The way she emphasized that last word made my blood run cold. I tried to walk away, but she raised her voice suddenly. Oh, and about those fines you've ignored. Everyone turned to look. You think you're above the rules because your daughter's special? The crowd went silent. Emma's face went red. She looked down, clutching her small drawing book. My hands clenched so tight I thought my nails would break skin. That's enough, I said. We're leaving. Of course you are, Karen said, smirking. That's what people like you do. Run. I walked Emma home in silence, every step heavier than the last. Once inside, she finally broke down, sobbing. Why does she hate me, Mom? I didn't do anything. I held her close, shaking. I don't know, sweetheart. But I swear I'll make her stop. I meant it. I was done being silent. I printed every letter, saved every video clip, and wrote an official complaint to the HOA board and the local precinct. But before I could send it, something happened that changed everything. The next morning, Karen was standing at the end of our driveway again, but this time, she wasn't alone. 2 police officers were with her. Ma'am, one said, "We've received a report of harassment and threats coming from this residence." My jaw dropped. Karen crossed her arms, feigning concern. I'm just worried about my safety. Her daughter keeps coming into my yard. I told her to stop. I even warned her last week that I might have to defend myself. Defend herself. The words barely registered, but later that night, as I watched her from the window, standing there, staring at our house with that same cold smile, I realized what she meant. It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. A promise that the next time she said, stop, she'd mean it with a bullet. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind of afternoon that pretends to be peaceful right before the world falls apart. The air was heavy with the scent of rain, thunder rumbling far off in the distance, and for a moment, everything almost felt calm again. Emma was sitting on the porch, drawing in her sketchbook while I made lemonade in the kitchen. She loved cloudy days, said they made color softer, easier to draw. I was humming to myself when I heard the thud. Then another. A hollow sound, like something bouncing. I glanced out the window and saw Emma's small red ball rolling slowly down the driveway, across the street, and into Karen's yard. My heart skipped. Don't, sweetheart. I called, but she was already moving, pushing the wheels of her chair with careful determination. I ran to the door, my voice rising. Emma, wait! Leave it. But she didn't hear me. The wind picked up just as she reached the edge of Karen's lawn. I saw the door open. Karen stepped out. Her hair was pulled tight, her face pinched and pale, and in her hand was the black handgun I'd seen glimpses of before. My stomach dropped to the floor. Stop! I screamed, sprinting down the steps. Emma froze halfway between our driveways, her eyes wide with confusion. Karen raised the gun slightly, her voice shrill and trembling. I told you, keep that thing off my property. Karen, put that down. I shouted, my voice cracking, but she wasn't listening. Her breathing was shallow, wild. You people don't listen. You think the rules don't apply to you. She stepped forward, the gun shaking in her hands. Emma started to cry softly, whispering, I'm sorry, I just wanted my ball. I could hear every word, every terrified breath. My body moved on instinct. I ran toward her, arms out, heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Karen, please, she's a child. I screamed, but Karen's eyes were distant, unseeing, like she was somewhere else entirely, trapped in her own twisted righteousness. Then she said it. I'm not going to hurt her. I'm just giving a warning. Her finger brushed the trigger. There was a deafening crack, a flash, a sound that split the world in half. For a moment, time stopped. Birds scattered from the trees. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. I didn't realize I was screaming until my knees hit the pavement. Emma's small hand slipped from her wheelchair, her drawing book tumbling to the ground, pages fluttering in the wind. There was a single hole through the cover, a thin line of blood trailing down her arm. My mind couldn't process it. It didn't seem real. I crawled toward her, shaking, my hands slick with sweat and rain as the first drops began to fall. No, no, no. Emma, look at me, baby, look at me. Her lips were pale, her eyes glassy, her chest rising shallowly. Behind me, Karen was frozen, the gun still pointed outward, her mouth open in silent shock. It was just a warning, she stammered, her voice trembling. She moved, I didn't mean, but I couldn't hear her anymore. All I could see was Emma's small body, trembling as I pressed my hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. My screams must have drawn the neighbors because doors flew open, people rushed out, shouts filled the air. Someone called 911. Someone else yelled at Karen to drop the weapon. She finally did, letting it clatter onto the wet grass as she stepped backward, whispering over and over, It was an accident. It was an accident. I held Emma in my lap, rocking her like I used to when she was a baby. Rain mixed with tears, with blood, running in red streams across my arms. Stay with me? I whispered desperately. Stay with me, please. Her fingers twitched, brushing weakly against my wrist. Mom, she whispered, barely audible. It hurts. I felt my heart tear in half. I know, baby. I know. You're going to be okay. The ambulance is coming. I didn't believe my own words, but I said them anyway. I had to. Sirens wailed in the distance, faint at first, then louder, closer. Neighbors crowded around, faces pale, horrified. Some of them were the same people who'd ignored us for months. Now they stood in stunned silence, staring at the woman they'd trusted, the HOA president, the one who'd promised to keep order. Karen stood apart from them all, arms limp, eyes wide with disbelief, like she was only now realizing what she'd done. She shouldn't have been there, she murmured to herself, as if repeating it might make it true. She shouldn't have. Stop talking. I screamed, my voice raw. You did this. You did this. She flinched, taking a step back. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes, not the kind she inspired in others, but real, helpless fear. When the paramedics arrived, they pulled me away gently, prying Emma from my arms. I tried to follow, but one of them held me back, saying something I couldn't hear over the rain and the pounding in my head. They worked fast, their voices clipped and urgent. One cut open her sleeve, another pressed gauze against the wound. I saw the bright red of her blood against their gloves, saw the way her eyes fluttered, and my breath caught in my throat. Please, I begged, please save her. They lifted her onto a stretcher, sirens still wailing, lights flashing red and blue across the puddles. As they carried her toward the ambulance, her small hand dangled off the side. I caught it, squeezed it. Mommy's right here, I whispered. I'm right here. She looked at me one last time before they shut the doors. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear her over the storm. Then she was gone, swallowed by flashing lights and rain. The police moved in next, voices shouting commands. Karen didn't resist. She stood there, shaking, hair plastered to her face, muttering the same broken sentence. It was an accident. When they cuffed her hands, she didn't even look up. The neighbors stood in silence as the squad car pulled away, the sound of the engine drowned by thunder. I collapsed onto the curb, numb. My hands were still stained with Emma's blood. Her sketchbook lay open in the grass beside me, soaked through, colors bleeding together, a picture of the two of us under a tree, holding hands, smiling. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at it, maybe an hour, maybe a lifetime. The world felt distant, unreal, like I'd stepped out of it entirely. When the rain finally stopped, the only sound left was the echo of that single gunshot, replaying in my head over and over, a cruel reminder that the peace I'd come here to find was gone forever. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear, the kind of sterile cold that seeps into your bones and makes every second stretch into eternity. I remember the bright lights, the shouting, the blur of doctors rushing Emma down the hallway. I wasn't allowed to follow at first. A nurse held me back as I screamed her name, my voice hoarse and breaking. Please, I begged. She's just a little girl. But they disappeared behind swinging doors, and I collapsed in the waiting room, shaking, drenched in rain and blood that wasn't mine. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, I couldn't tell. Every sound, the beep of machines, the shuffle of footsteps, made me flinch. Finally, a doctor came out, his face grave. She's stable, he said. I nearly collapsed again, relief crashing through me like a wave. But the bullet caused internal damage. She'll need surgery, and it's going to be a long recovery. Stable. The word became my entire world. They let me see her after the operation, and when I walked into that room, I barely recognized her. My sweet, bubbly girl lay motionless, pale, as the sheets, tubes, and wires everywhere. Her tiny hand rested on the blanket, bruised and limp. I took it in mine and whispered, "You're safe now, baby. You're safe." But deep down, I wasn't sure any of us were. Because Karen's shadow still lingered in the whispers outside the room, in the flash of red and blue lights still dancing in my mind. The news spread fast. HOA president shoots disabled child. The headlines flashed across every local station. Suddenly, the same neighbors who'd looked away for months were leaving flowers and cards at the hospital. People cried on the news, saying they never saw it coming. Some claimed they always knew Karen had a temper. I didn't care what they said. All I wanted was for Emma to open her eyes. Days turned into weeks. She drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes whispering my name, sometimes lost in dreams I couldn't reach. Each time her heart monitor beeped, my own heart skipped. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. I just sat beside her, holding her hand, counting the seconds between breaths. When she finally woke up fully, her first words were, "Did I do something bad, Mom?" That shattered me more than anything else. I cried right there, holding her face in my hands. "No, my love, you did nothing wrong. You never did." She smiled faintly, weak but alive, and in that moment, I knew I'd burn the world down before letting anyone hurt her again. Meanwhile, the investigation began. Karen was arrested and charged with aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, and attempted murder. But even behind bars, she found a way to twist the truth. Her lawyer argued it was self-defense, that she thought Emma was a prowler, that she fired a warning shot to scare her off. They painted her as a terrified woman protecting her property, not the predator she really was. When I heard that, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let them rewrite what happened. So I gathered everything, the letters, the recordings, the threats. I talked to every neighbor who'd seen anything that day. Most of them were hesitant, afraid of HOA retaliation, but one man came forward. Mr. Jenkins, a retired veteran who lived 2 houses down. He'd installed a new security camera facing the street. I didn't mean to spy, he told the police, but I saw the whole thing. His footage became the turning point. Clear as day, Emma reaching for her ball, Karen raising the gun, firing directly toward her. No warning shot, no fear, just rage. When the trial began, I sat in the front row every single day, holding Emma's hand in her wheelchair. She was healing, but the scar on her arm and the nightmares that woke her up screaming were reminders that some wounds never fade. Karen looked different in court, smaller somehow, her confidence stripped away. But when our eyes met, I saw no remorse, only resentment. She still believed she was the victim. Her lawyer tried to spin the story, claiming she'd snapped under stress and that the HOA pressure had pushed her too far. I wanted to scream that she was the pressure. She was the danger. But I held my tongue, waiting for my turn. When the prosecution finally called me to the stand, I told the truth, every brutal, painful detail. I described the notes, the threats, the night I saw the gun case, and the moment the shot tore through my daughter's world. The courtroom was silent except for my voice and the soft hum of the ceiling fans. I looked at the jury, tears blurring my vision. She didn't just pull a trigger, I said. She aimed it at innocence, at a child who only wanted her ball back. When they played the security footage, gasps filled the room. Karen's face drained of color. For the first time, she looked afraid, not of punishment but of truth. The verdict came 2 days later. Guilty on all counts. The judge's gavel fell like thunder. I didn't cheer, didn't smile. I just held Emma and whispered, "It's over." But it wasn't, not really. Healing doesn't happen in verdicts or sentences. It happens slowly, painfully in the quiet hours after everyone else has gone home. Months passed. Karen went to prison. The HOA replaced her with someone kind, a young woman named Melissa who apologized to me in person and banned all future weapons from community property. Some neighbors came by with apologies, others with casseroles, as if food could erase what we'd been through. I accepted their kindness, but never forgot their silence. Emma started physical therapy, learning to move again, despite the pain. Her resilience amazed everyone, even her doctors. Sometimes, late at night, she'd show me her sketches. The drawings had changed. Fewer houses, more skies, more light. "I like drawing hope," she'd say, her voice soft but steady. I'd smile and hold her close. One evening, as the sun set over Willow Creek, she looked out the window and whispered, "Mom, do you think she's sorry?" I didn't know what to say. I thought about Karen, sitting in a cell, the weight of her choices pressing down like gravity. Maybe she was sorry. Maybe she wasn't, but that no longer mattered. What matters, I told Emma, brushing her hair back, is that we're still here, and no one will ever take that from us again. She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, no shouting, no notes, no hatred. Just the sound of the wind in the trees, soft and forgiving. That night, before I turned off the light, I looked at the framed sketch hanging on the wall, one of Emma's drawings from before the shooting. It showed a small girl in a wheelchair and her mother standing beside her, both holding hands beneath a sign that said home. I realized then that despite everything, the pain, the fear, the loss, we'd found something deeper than peace. We'd found strength. The kind that doesn't come from safety, but from surviving the storm and standing again, no matter how many times the world tries to break you.